The Desert's Daughter. Arizona Territory, 1873. The buzzards circled lower. Mara pressed her cracked lips together, tasting blood and sand as she watched death spiral overhead in the merciless Arizona sun. 3 days ago, she had been a settler's daughter with calloused hands and dreams of expanding her family's ranch. Now she was carrion, left to rot in the Sonoran Desert by the Comancheros who had butchered her parents and burned everything she'd ever known. The sand beneath her was stained dark where she'd crawled, leaving a trail like a wounded animal. Her torn calico dress offered no protection from the sun that had already blistered her skin raw. Each breath felt like swallowing fire. This is how I die, she thought, watching the largest buzzard drop closer. Alone. Forgotten. Food for scavengers. But then she heard it, the soft whisper of unshod hooves on stone. She remembered her mother's smile as she taught her to read their worn Bible. She remembered her father's strong voice as he spoke of expanding their cattle ranch. They were German immigrants who came west after the war between the states, seeking opportunity in the territorial expansion. They taught her to be brave. But now, she felt small and helpless. The Chihuahuan Desert was unforgiving. She was thirsty and hungry. Her throat felt dry like the sand around her. Mara thought of escape. She wanted to run away from the Comancheros. She dreamed of reaching Fort Lowell near Tucson. But the desert was vast and empty, filled with saguaro cactus and rocky arroyos. There was no one to help her. She felt the weight of despair pressing on her chest. As the sun moved across the sky, Mara's strength faded. She could barely keep her eyes open. She thought about the raiders. They were cruel Mexican and Anglo outlaws who traded in stolen goods and captives. They laughed as they took her. They did not care about her pain. She wished she could forget their faces. In the distance, she heard the soft sound of unshod hooves on stone. At first, she thought it was a mirage. Her mind played tricks on her. But as the sound got closer, she realized it was not a dream. It was a man, a Chiricahua Apache warrior named Nailnish, though Mexican traders called him Koa. He rode a paint horse, scanning the ground for tracks. Mara felt a flicker of hope mixed with terror. Stories from the Arizona Citizen filled her mind, tales of Apache raids and warfare. But she was too weak to call out. She lay still, hoping he would find her. Nailnish approached cautiously on horseback. He was careful not to make noise. He knew the danger of army patrols in this territory. When he reached Mara, Nailnish dismounted and knelt beside her. He saw her frail body and her despair. He felt a connection to her suffering. He understood what it meant to be abandoned by those who should protect you. Nailnish looked at her face. She was pale and dirty. Her calico dress was torn. He knew she was a captive, just like he had been when soldiers took him as a child to the Bosque Redondo reservation. At first, Mara thought Nailnish was a figment of her imagination. She could barely focus on his face with its distinctive red headband and long black hair. She thought she was dreaming. But Nailnish spoke softly in Spanish, trying to reassure her. No tengas miedo. Don't be afraid. He did not want to scare her. He reached out a hand, but Mara flinched. She was afraid. She had been hurt before by men who took what they wanted. Nailnish paused, feeling her fear. He understood that trust takes time, especially between Inda and Apache in these times of war. He sat back and waited. Mara's vision began to clear. She saw Nailnish more clearly. He was strong and tall, with intelligent dark eyes and calloused hands that spoke of hard living. His leather vest was decorated with silver conchos traded from Mexican merchants. He looked at her with concern, not cruelty. Slowly, Mara felt a bit of strength return. Nailnish decided to help her. He lifted her gently, cradling her in his arms, then placed her on his horse. He carried her away from the harsh sun toward the Dragoon Mountains, where hidden springs provided water and towering rock formations offered shelter. Mara felt the coolness of shade for the first time in days. He placed her on the ground near a small spring and went to gather medicinal plants. Mara listened to the sounds around her. The wind whispered through ocotillo and palo verde trees. She could hear canyon wrens singing in the distance. She felt a sense of peace wash over her, despite not knowing what would happen next. Nailnish returned with water in a decorated gourd and desert willow bark for her wounds. He knelt beside her and offered the water. Mara hesitated. She was still unsure, remembering stories of Apache cruelty. But her thirst overcame her fear. She took the container and drank deeply. The water felt like life itself. As she drank, Nailnish watched her closely. He was relieved to see her drinking. He spoke to her softly in his mixture of Spanish and broken English, sharing knowledge about surviving in the desert. He talked about reading the stars and finding water in seemingly barren land. Mara listened, feeling the warmth of his words and the absence of threat in his voice. With each passing moment, Mara's strength grew. She began to trust Nailnish. He was different from her captors and the hostile Apache described in territorial newspapers. He showed her kindness. He did not want to hurt her. He wanted to help her heal. Nailnish tended to her wounds with the skill of someone who had treated many injuries in a life of warfare and survival. He cleaned her cuts and bruises with care, using ground-up desert plants to ease her pain. Mara felt grateful for his help. She watched him work, admiring his patience and gentleness. As the sun began to set, Nailnish shared stories about his people in his limited Spanish. He spoke of the Chiricahua way of life, of sacred mountains and traditional hunting grounds now occupied by miners and ranchers. Mara learned about Apache customs and the ongoing war with the U.S. Army. She felt a bond growing between them that transcended the conflict raging across Arizona territory. Mara began to feel hope. Nailnish's presence made her feel safe. She realized that she was not alone anymore, even though she was now caught between two worlds at war with each other. The bond they formed was new, but it was strong. Nailnish prepared a small fire as night fell, carefully concealing it in a rocky depression. The flames danced in the darkness. Mara sat beside him, feeling warmth spread through her body. They shared a simple meal of roasted acorns, prickly pear fruit, and dried venison. It was the first food she had eaten in days. As they ate, Nailnish looked at Mara. He saw her strength returning and admired her spirit. He knew that they were both survivors of a harsh land and a brutal time. They faced their own battles but found comfort in each other's company, despite the vast cultural divide between them. Mara began to share her story in her basic Spanish. She spoke of her family's ranch and her life before the Comancheros came. Nailnish listened intently, occasionally asking questions in Spanish or English. He understood her pain and loss. He wanted to help her heal, even though helping a white woman could bring deadly consequences from both sides of this territorial war. The stars twinkled above them in the clear desert sky as they talked. The night was calm and peaceful, broken only by the distant howl of coyotes. Mara felt a sense of belonging she had not experienced since losing her family. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope. Nailnish and Mara sat together in the desert night. They were two souls brought together by fate during one of the bloodiest periods in Arizona Territory's history. In that moment, they found strength in each other. The journey ahead would be difficult, but they were not alone anymore. They were ready to face whatever came next. Mara woke to the sound of rustling mesquite leaves. The sun had not yet risen over the Dragoon Mountains. She opened her eyes and saw Nailnish sitting nearby, watching over her while keeping alert for army patrols or hostile raiders. He was focused and ready, his rifle within easy reach. She felt grateful for his presence. The warmth from the carefully banked fire comforted her. Nailnish noticed she was awake. He smiled softly, a gesture that transformed his usually serious face. It was small, but it made Mara feel safe. The fear from her captivity began to fade. She could see that Nailnish was different from both the Comancheros and the hostile Apache described in soldiers' stories. After a moment, Nailnish stood and moved quietly through the desert brush. He gathered more ocotillo wood for the fire and checked their surroundings for signs of pursuit. Mara sat up slowly, stretching her stiff limbs. She could feel strength returning to her body. The food, water, and medicinal plants had helped more than she thought possible. Nailnish returned and built up the fire, flames flickering and crackling in the morning stillness. He prepared a simple breakfast of ground mesquite pods mixed with water to make a nourishing mush. The smell filled the air, and Mara's stomach growled. She realized how truly hungry she was for real sustenance. As they ate, Nailnish spoke about desert survival in his mixture of Spanish and English. He shared how to find food and water in the Sonoran Desert, knowledge passed down through generations of Apache living in this harsh but beautiful land. Mara listened closely. She wanted to learn. Nailnish was a skilled hunter and tracker, trained from childhood in the ways his people had survived for centuries. Mara felt a spark of excitement. This knowledge was important for survival in Arizona Territory. It would help her live in this dangerous land. Nailnish's patience and teaching made her feel valued. She was not just a rescued captive. She was a person with potential to contribute. After breakfast, Nailnish suggested they move to his band's hidden camp. The Comancheros or army patrols might find this place. She agreed, feeling curious about Apache life. Together, they rode his paint horse through the desert landscape. moving carefully to avoid leaving tracks. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows among the saguaro and palo verde. As they traveled, Mara admired the harsh beauty of the Sonoran Desert. The colors were bright and alive: red rock formations, green cacti, purple desert willow. Nailnish pointed out different plants and animals, explaining their importance to his people's survival. Mara began to see the world through Apache eyes. They arrived at the hidden camp nestled among towering rock formations. It was a small, well-concealed place with brush shelters, storage areas for food and weapons, and a clear spring. There were about 12 people, warriors, women, and children who had refused to surrender to the San Carlos reservation. Mara felt a sense of wonder mixed with apprehension. Nailnish's sister Diezba spoke sharply in Apache, clearly questioning why he had brought a white woman to their sanctuary. But an elderly medicine woman named Beshbi Igawa examined Mara with professional interest, recognizing something in her eyes that reminded her of Apache children who had survived cavalry attacks. Nailnish showed Mara how to gather water from the spring without disturbing the careful camouflage that hid it from enemy scouts. He demonstrated how to fill gourds and keep the water clean using traditional methods. Mara watched closely, eager to learn and prove her worth to these people who had every reason to distrust her. As days passed, Mara became more comfortable despite the constant tension of living as hunted fugitives. She learned how to weave baskets from willow shoots, how to prepare traditional foods like roasted agave hearts, and how to move silently through rocky terrain. Nailnish and the Apache women taught her patiently, sharing knowledge essential for survival. One evening, while they sat by the carefully concealed fire, Nailnish opened up about his life in more detail. He spoke in Spanish of his father's death at Apache Pass, fighting soldiers led by officers like General James Carleton. He explained the tragedy of the Bosque Redondo, where the government had tried to confine Apache with their traditional enemies, the Navajo. Nailnish noticed Mara's fascination with Apache culture and her genuine desire to understand their struggles. He encouraged her to ask questions about their traditions, their connection to sacred mountains like Mount Graham, and their resistance to confinement on reservations. Mara began to understand the complex reasons behind the Apache Wars. Their bond grew stronger as Mara proved herself useful and trustworthy. She felt a sense of belonging she had not experienced since losing her family. Nailnish treated her as an equal despite the vast cultural differences. He valued her thoughts and growing knowledge of Apache ways. But one day, as they were gathering prickly pear fruit, they heard voices echoing off the canyon walls. Mara's heart raced as she recognized English commands. They were cavalry troopers from Fort Bowie, searching for Apache hostiles. Nailnish sensed her fear and took her hand, guiding her toward a hidden trail. He led her away from the sounds, moving quickly and quietly through terrain only Apache knew intimately. They found a rocky outcrop where they could hide and observe. Mara's mind raced with memories of her captivity and the violence she had witnessed. She felt panic rising within her. Nailnish squeezed her hand gently, his calloused fingers steady and reassuring. He looked into her eyes, grounding her with his calm presence. He spoke softly in Spanish, reminding her of the strength they had found together. They were survivors. They would face this challenge like all the others. As they waited, Mara listened to the soldiers below. She could hear Captain Burke's harsh voice ordering his men to search every hiding place, speaking of Apache as if they were animals to be hunted. Mara's heart sank as she realized the deadly danger Nailnish and his people faced simply for trying to live freely in their ancestral homeland. After the patrol passed, moving deeper into the mountains on a false trail, Nailnish turned to Mara. He could see the worry in her eyes and the weight of understanding what her presence might mean for his people's safety. He promised to protect her, but Mara felt a heavy burden of guilt. Mara took a deep breath, understanding she had to make a choice. She could not let her presence endanger Nailnish or his band. She decided she needed to learn more about warfare and survival. She could not be just a protected burden anymore. Nailnish agreed to teach her more advanced skills. They would prepare together for the increasing pressure from army patrols. Mara felt a sense of purpose growing within her. She wanted to protect Nailnish and his people. She did not want to be helpless anymore. As they returned to the hidden camp, Mara felt a new determination. She was not just a victim of circumstance. She was becoming part of something bigger, the Apache struggle for survival and freedom. Nailnish had shown her kindness and strength. She wanted to return that gift. In the days that followed, Mara worked hard to master essential skills. She practiced moving silently, learned to read tracks and signs, and studied the complex network of hidden trails through the mountains. She felt empowered by knowledge and physical competence. Nailnish was proud of her progress. He watched as she grew stronger and more confident, transforming from a helpless captive into a capable member of their small band. Together, they prepared for the challenges ahead, knowing that General Crook's systematic campaign was closing in on all remaining Apache resistors. Mara and Nailnish stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next. Their connection deepened with each passing day of shared danger and mutual dependence. They were two souls united by fate during the final phase of the Apache Wars, learning to trust and support each other completely. The desert was harsh, but together they could overcome anything. Mara felt hope for the future despite the overwhelming odds against Apache freedom. She was not just surviving, she was truly living. And with Nailnish by her side, she was ready to fight for a new beginning. Mara woke up to the soft glow of dawn over the Dragoon Mountains. She felt stronger than ever before. The week spent with Nailnish and his band had changed her completely. She was no longer just a survivor, she was becoming a warrior in the Apache resistance. She looked over at Nailnish, who was already awake, tending to their weapons and keeping watch. Mara joined him, and they shared a simple breakfast of dried venison and mesquite meal cakes. As they ate, Nailnish spoke about the skills she had mastered: tracking, silent movement, reading the desert signs. He encouraged her to practice more with traditional weapons. He believed in her potential, and that made her heart swell with pride. After breakfast, Nailnish decided it was time for Mara to learn advanced Apache fighting techniques. He wanted to show her how to use terrain for advantage in combat. Nailnish explained that understanding the land was key to Apache military success against overwhelming odds. Mara listened carefully, eager to master these essential skills. They set off into the rocky terrain together. Nailnish pointed out natural hiding places and showed her how to move between cover without being seen by enemy scouts. Mara felt excitement building inside her. She was learning to see the desert as Apache warriors did, not as empty wasteland, but as an ally. As they moved through the mountains, Nailnish shared stories of his training under war leaders like Mongus Coloradus and Cochise. He spoke of lessons learned in battles against Mexican troops and American cavalry. Mara felt connected to this warrior tradition and the wisdom passed down through generations of Apache fighters. They stopped by a hidden spring where Nailnish taught her to make and use a traditional Apache bow. She watched him shape the wood with stone tools, trying to absorb every detail of the ancient craft. When it was her turn to try, she felt nervous but determined. With Nailnish's patient guidance, she managed to create a functional weapon. Nailnish smiled at her success, praising her quick learning and steady hands. Mara felt a rush of confidence and accomplishment. She realized she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. Together, they practiced shooting at targets, and her accuracy improved with each arrow. As they worked, Nailnish spoke about Apache military tactics, how small bands could defeat larger forces through superior knowledge of terrain, mobility, and surprise attacks. Mara felt inspired by these strategic insights. She wanted to contribute to their defense, not just be protected by others. After their training session, Nailnish proposed they scout the area for signs of army patrols. Recent reports from other Apache bands indicated increased military activity throughout the territory. Mara agreed, feeling ready to use her new skills in a real situation. As the sun began to set, they made their way to a high vantage point overlooking the valley approaches to their hidden camp. Mara felt a sense of accomplishment as she moved silently through difficult terrain. Nailnish watched her with growing pride. He saw her transformation from frightened captive to capable Apache warrior. That night, as they sat by a small, concealed fire, Mara reflected on her incredible journey. She felt grateful to Nailnish for his patient teaching and unwavering support. He had not only saved her life, but shown her strength she never knew she possessed. Mara decided to share her deeper feelings. She told Nailnish how much his guidance meant to her and expressed her desire to fully commit to the Apache cause. She wanted to stand with him as an equal partner, not just a protected refugee. Nailnish listened intently, his expression serious yet warm. He shared his thoughts about their uncertain future. The Apache resistance was under tremendous pressure from General Crook's campaign, and their way of life was disappearing. But he also spoke of hope, that love and courage could survive even in the darkest times. Mara felt a profound connection to his words. Nailnish expressed his admiration for her transformation and her commitment to their people. He knew that together they could face any challenge the future might bring. As they talked under the desert stars, Mara felt their bond deepen beyond mere attraction into true partnership. In the days that followed, they trained intensively together. Mara practiced with bow and rifle, learning to shoot accurately from different positions and distances. Nailnish taught her Apache war tactics, including how to set ambushes and how to escape when outnumbered. One afternoon, while they were practicing tactical movements, Nailnish sensed danger approaching. His years of survival had given him almost supernatural awareness of threats. He signaled for absolute silence and led Mara to a carefully chosen observation point. Through gaps in the rocks, they could see a large cavalry patrol moving through the valley below. Captain William Burke was leading nearly 30 troopers, more than enough to overwhelm their small band if discovered. Nailnish studied their movement patterns, looking for weaknesses and escape routes. He showed Mara how to assess military threats, counting enemies, identifying their weapons and equipment, predicting their likely tactical approaches. This was knowledge that could mean the difference between survival and annihilation for their people. As they watched the patrol disappear into the distance, Nailnish turned to Mara with new respect in his eyes. She had remained perfectly calm and alert during potential mortal danger. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Mara felt a surge of confidence. She was no longer afraid of soldiers or uncertain about her place in this conflict. She had chosen her side and was prepared to fight for it with everything she had learned. The next day, they returned to the hidden camp to share intelligence about the increased military pressure. The band would need to move soon to avoid encirclement by converging army units. Everyone began preparing for another dangerous relocation. Mara worked alongside the Apache women, helping to pack essential supplies and weapons. She felt fully integrated into their community now, no longer an outsider, but a contributing member of their extended family. During a quiet moment, Nailnish approached her with a serious expression. He had been thinking about their future together and the formal commitments that Apache culture required for true partnership. Despite their unusual circumstances, he wanted to honor traditional ways. Mara understood the importance of what he was suggesting. In Apache society, marriage was not just personal, but involved entire family networks and clan relationships. She felt honored that he and the elders were willing to accept her so completely. As preparations for departure continued around them, Nailnish and Mara stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next. Their connection had grown from desperate circumstances into deep love and mutual respect. They were partners now in every sense that mattered. The desert had tested them both severely, but together they had not just survived but grown stronger. Mara felt complete confidence in their future, whatever challenges it might bring. She was ready to fight alongside Nailnish for their people and their way of life. Mara woke up to the soft sound of horses moving through the camp. The sun had not yet risen over the mountains, but the band was already preparing to move to a new hiding place. She felt the familiar tension that came with life as Apache resistors, always ready to flee, always watching for enemies. She saw Nailnish checking weapons and supplies with the other warriors. His movements were calm and efficient, honed by years of guerrilla warfare against overwhelming odds. She joined him, helping to secure their few possessions for rapid travel. The elderly medicine woman, Beshbiegawa, approached Mara with a bundle of sacred items wrapped in soft deerskin. She spoke in Apache, then switched to Spanish for Mara's benefit. She wanted to perform a ceremony to formally adopt Mara into their clan before they faced the increasing dangers ahead. Mara felt deeply honored by this recognition. Apache adoption was not given lightly, especially to outsiders during wartime. It meant full acceptance as family, with all the responsibilities and protections that entailed. As the ceremony began, Mara was painted with sacred clay and given traditional clothing made by the women of the band. Beshbiegawa spoke prayers in Apache while burning sweetgrass and other ceremonial plants. Mara felt a profound sense of belonging wash over her. When the ritual was complete, she was no longer Mara the settler's daughter, but nately she who becomes different, a full member of the Chiricahua Apache resistance. The transformation felt as real and significant as her physical survival in the desert. Nailnish watched the ceremony with visible pride and emotion. His chosen woman was now truly one of his people, accepted by the elders and bound by sacred obligations to defend their community. Their personal bond was now reinforced by cultural and spiritual ties. After the ceremony, the band continued preparations for their dangerous journey to new hiding places in the Chiricahua Mountains. Army patrols were converging on their area, and they needed to move quickly to avoid encirclement and capture. As they traveled, Mara rode beside Nailnish, her new Apache clothing practical and comfortable for desert travel. She carried her own weapons now, a bow, arrows, and a captured army carbine. She was no longer a protected burden but a contributing warrior. The journey was treacherous, requiring them to cross open areas where cavalry patrols might spot them. Nailnish led them along ancient Apache trails known only to his people, routes that took advantage of every bit of available cover. During one particularly dangerous crossing, they had to wait for hours in a narrow canyon while a large military column passed nearby. Mara remained perfectly still and silent, her training and discipline now second nature. She had become truly Apache in her ability to blend with the harsh landscape. When they finally reached their new camp, hidden high in the Chiricahua Mountains near sacred sites known to Apache for generations, Mara felt a sense of homecoming. This was her place now, among these mountains and with these people who had accepted her completely. The new camp was even more defensible than their previous hiding place, with multiple escape routes and clear views of all approaches. But it was also more isolated, making it harder to obtain supplies and ammunition needed for their continued resistance. That evening, as the band gathered around a carefully concealed fire, Nailnish stood to address them. He spoke of the increasing pressure from General Crook's campaign and the hard choices they faced. They could continue fighting as free Apache, or they could surrender and accept confinement on the San Carlos Reservation. The discussion that followed was intense and emotional. Some argued for continued resistance despite the odds. Others, especially those with young children, spoke of the need to preserve Apache lives and culture, even under reservation conditions. Mara listened carefully to the debate, understanding now how complex their situation had become. These were not simple choices between good and evil, but desperate decisions about survival and identity in impossible circumstances. When her turn came to speak, Mara stood and addressed the group in her improving Apache, supplemented with Spanish. She spoke of her own transformation and her commitment to their cause. She pledged to stand with them whatever they decided, as a full member of their family. Her words carried weight because of her unique perspective, someone who had chosen to become Apache rather than being born to it. The elders nodded approvingly at her declaration of loyalty and courage. As the night wore on, the band reached a consensus. They would continue their resistance for now, but they would also prepare for the possibility that surrender might eventually become necessary to preserve their people's survival. The next morning brought disturbing news from Apache scouts. Multiple army columns were moving through the territory in a coordinated sweep designed to trap all remaining resistant bands. Captain Burke's unit was part of a larger operation that would be difficult to evade. Nailnish gathered the warriors to plan their response. They could not fight such overwhelming numbers directly, but they might be able to strike quick blows and escape before the soldiers could respond effectively. Mara volunteered to participate in these raids, her skills now sufficient to contribute meaningfully to Apache military operations. Nailnish was proud of her courage but concerned about the additional risks. After careful consideration, he agreed to include her in a planned attack on a supply train bringing ammunition to Army units in the field. Her knowledge of Anglo tactics and ability to blend in among captives or settlers might prove valuable. The raid was planned with typical Apache precision, careful scouting, precise timing, and multiple escape routes prepared in advance. Mara felt nervous but confident as they prepared to strike at their enemies. As they moved into position for the attack, Mara reflected on how far she had come from the desperate, dying girl Nailnish had found in the desert. She was now a full warrior in the Apache resistance, ready to risk her life for her chosen people. The supply train approached their ambush point exactly as predicted. Mara took her assigned position among the rocks, her captured carbine ready and her heart steady. She was no longer afraid. She was dangerous. When Nailnish gave the signal, the Apache attacked with devastating effectiveness. The surprised soldiers and civilian teamsters had no chance to organize effective resistance before the raiders disappeared back into the maze of canyons they knew so well. The raid was completely successful. Weapons, ammunition, and supplies were captured with no Apache casualties. More importantly, it demonstrated that the Apache resistance was still capable of striking effective blows against their enemies. As they returned to camp with their captured supplies, Mara felt the satisfaction of victory alongside her Apache family. She had proven herself in combat, and contributed to their survival. She was truly one of them now. But their triumph was shadowed by the knowledge that such victories were becoming increasingly rare and difficult. The army was learning Apache tactics and adapting their strategies accordingly. The end of free Apache life was approaching, no matter how bravely they fought. Mara and Nailnish stood together as the band celebrated their successful raid. Their love had been forged in the crucible of war and hardship, tested by danger and proven strong. Whatever the future brought, they would face it as true partners. The desert night was clear and beautiful, filled with stars that had watched over Apache warriors for countless generations. Mara felt deeply connected to this land and these people who had given her new life and purpose. She was ready for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. Mara woke to the sound of urgent voices in the pre-dawn darkness. Nailnish was already up, speaking rapidly with scouts who had ridden through the night with disturbing news. Army units were converging on their mountain stronghold from multiple directions, a coordinated assault designed to end their resistance permanently. She quickly dressed in her Apache clothing and checked her weapons. The carbine she had captured in their recent raid was loaded and ready. Her bow and arrows were close at hand. After months of training and combat, these preparations had become automatic responses to danger. Nailnish gathered the band's leaders to assess their situation. The scouts reported at least 3 separate columns of cavalry and infantry moving through the canyons below, supported by Apache scouts from rival bands who had agreed to help the army track down remaining resistors. Beshbiegawa, the elderly medicine woman, spoke gravely about the spiritual significance of their predicament. She had dreamed of great changes coming, of the need to preserve Apache ways even if their freedom was lost. Her words carried deep weight among the people. The warriors discussed their limited options. They could try to fight their way out through one of the encircling forces, but with women and children to protect, casualties would be heavy. They could scatter into small groups, but that would mean abandoning their clan structure and traditional way of life. Mara listened to the debate with growing understanding of how desperate their situation had become. General Crook's systematic campaign was finally achieving its goal of eliminating Apache resistance through overwhelming military pressure and the use of Apache auxiliaries. As dawn broke over the mountains, revealing dust clouds from approaching cavalry units, Nailnish made the hardest decision of his life as a war leader. Rather than see his people destroyed in hopeless battle, he would negotiate with the army commanders for terms of surrender. The decision tore at his heart, but Mara understood the wisdom behind it. Sometimes survival required accepting bitter compromises. The Apache people would endure, even if their freedom was lost. Their culture and identity could survive even reservation life. Under a white flag made from Mara's old dress, Nailnish rode down to meet with Captain Burke, who commanded the lead element of the encircling forces. Mara insisted on accompanying him as interpreter, her unique position allowing her to understand both military and Apache perspectives. The negotiation was tense and complex. Burke demanded unconditional surrender and immediate removal to San Carlos Reservation in central Arizona. Nailnish insisted on guarantees that families would not be separated and that Apache customs would be respected within reservation boundaries. Mara translated carefully between the two languages and cultures, helping each side understand the other's concerns and constraints. Her presence helped prevent misunderstandings that could have led to unnecessary bloodshed. After hours of difficult discussion, they reached terms that satisfied neither side completely but offered hope for Apache survival. The band would surrender their weapons and accept transportation to San Carlos, but as a group, maintaining their clan relationships and as much of their traditional structure as reservation rules allowed. The surrender ceremony was heartbreaking for everyone involved. Proud warriors who had never been defeated in direct combat handed over rifles and carbines that had kept them free for years. Women wept as they packed sacred items and family treasures that might not be allowed on the reservation. Mara stood beside Nailnish as he formally submitted to army authority, ending years of resistance that had made him one of the most sought-after Apache leaders in the territory. She felt his pain and pride, grief for their lost freedom, but satisfaction that his people would survive. The journey to San Carlos took 2 weeks through country that had been the Apache homeland for generations. Mara watched the landscape pass, knowing she might never see these sacred mountains again. Each mile took them further from the life they had known together. At San Carlos, the reality of reservation life was harsh and demoralizing. Thousands of Apache from different bands were crowded together, many traditional enemies forced to live in close proximity. Government rations were often inadequate, and the Indian agents frequently corrupt or incompetent. But Mara and Nailnish adapted as they had learned to do throughout their time together. They found ways to preserve Apache traditions within the constraints imposed by federal authorities. Mara used her literacy to help other Apache navigate the bewildering bureaucracy of forms and regulations. Nailnish became a leader among the younger men, helping them find purpose and dignity despite their confinement. His reputation as a war leader gave him influence that he used to protect Apache interests whenever possible. Their first child was born in the spring of 1875, a daughter they named Ayana in Apache and Mary in English, a bridge between two worlds like her mother. She represented hope for a future that would honor Apache heritage while adapting to new realities. As years passed, Mara reflected often on her incredible journey from German immigrant's daughter to Apache wife and mother. She had witnessed the end of an era, the final defeat of Apache resistance, and the closing of the frontier period in Arizona Territory. She never forgot her original family, killed by Comancheros in that distant spring of 1873. But she had found a new family among the Apache, one bound not by blood alone, but by shared hardship, mutual respect, and love that transcended cultural boundaries. The story of Mara and Nailnish became part of Apache oral tradition, told around fires during long winter evenings as an example of how love and courage could survive even in the darkest times. It was a reminder that in the collision of cultures that defined the American Southwest, individual human connections could transcend the broader forces of history. The battle had ended, but the aftermath weighed heavy on the reservation community. Mara knelt beside Nailnish in their small adobe house, her hands trembling as she pressed cloth against a wound he had received during a confrontation with corrupt Indian agents. The lamplight cast shadows over them, revealing the pain etched on his weathered face. She felt fear clawing at her heart. Nailnish tried to smile, but it was weak. He reassured her in Spanish that he would be okay, but Mara could see the seriousness of his injury. She needed to act quickly. Other Apache families were dealing with their own troubles, but she felt a deep sense of urgency about her husband's condition. Mara helped Nailnish to their bed and gathered traditional medicines that Beshbiagawa had taught her to prepare. She worked quickly, her hands steady despite her worry. Nailnish watched her, pride shining in his dark eyes despite his pain. As she prepared poultices from desert plants they had managed to grow secretly near their quarters, Mara felt a surge of determination. She had fought for this man during the Apache Wars, and now she would care for him through the different battles of reservation life. She applied the medicine to his wound, hoping it would ease his suffering. Nailnish winced but held her gaze steadily. He admired her strength and spirit, qualities that had only grown stronger during their years together. Mara felt the warmth of his love, and it gave her courage. She was no longer just a girl rescued from the desert. She was a woman, a mother, and a healer. When she finished treating his wound, Mara sat beside him, holding his calloused hand in hers. She spoke softly about their daughter Ayana, now 3 years old and learning to speak both Apache and English. She told him about her plans to help other Apache families navigate the complex reservation bureaucracy. Just then, a group of Apache elders approached their house. They looked grave, their faces lined with the weight of difficult decisions. The leader, an old war chief named Dakiya, spoke in formal Apache about new restrictions the Indian agent planned to impose on their community. Mara felt a chill run down her spine. The reservation system was designed to destroy Apache culture systematically, and each new regulation made traditional life more difficult. She turned to Nailnish, who squeezed her hand, grounding her. He promised they would find ways to preserve their people's heritage despite the obstacles. The night wore on as Apache families gathered to discuss how to respond to the latest threats to their way of life. Mara helped organize the meeting, her literacy and understanding of Anglo bureaucracy making her valuable in planning the resistance to cultural destruction. As dawn broke over the San Carlos Mountains, Nailnish was still weak but determined to participate in community leadership. He insisted on helping plan ways to secretly maintain Apache traditions while appearing to comply with government regulations. Mara wanted him to rest, but she understood his commitment to their people. Nailnish instructed younger Apache men in subtle forms of resistance, how to preserve traditional skills while working in government-mandated agricultural programs. How to maintain clan relationships despite official attempts to break up Apache social structure. Mara joined the Apache women in their own forms of cultural preservation. They continued traditional crafts, taught children Apache stories and songs in secret, and maintained the complex kinship networks that formed the backbone of Apache society. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the reservation boundaries, Mara felt the familiar tension of living under constant surveillance. Apache police loyal to the Indian agent watched for any signs of backward behavior, ready to report violations to authorities who could cut rations or impose other punishments. That night, as they sat in their small government-built house, Nailnish turned to Mara with the serious expression she had learned to recognize over their years together. He spoke about the future and their responsibility to preserve Apache identity for their daughter and the generations to come. Mara felt a deep connection to his words. She had chosen to become Apache, and that choice carried lifelong obligations to the community that had accepted her. She was ready to face whatever challenges reservation life might bring, just as she had faced the dangers of the Apache Wars. As the fire in their small stove crackled softly, Nailnish expressed how much Mara meant to him and to their people. He spoke of their shared journey from the desperate days of guerrilla warfare to the different but equally challenging realities of confined reservation existence. Suddenly, they heard urgent knocking at their door. Nailnish stood carefully, his wounds still painful, while Mara reached for the rifle they kept hidden despite regulations prohibiting Apache possession of firearms. A young Apache man entered, breathing heavily from running. He reported that Indian agent Crawford was planning a major crackdown on traditional activities, including the secret ceremonies and language instruction that helped maintain Apache culture. Government boarding school officials would arrive soon to take more Apache children away from their families for forced assimilation. Mara's heart sank as she thought of their daughter Ayana. The boarding schools were designed to kill the Indian, save the man, stripping away everything that made Apache children connected to their heritage. She felt the same protective anger that had driven her during their warrior days. Nailnish stood tall, rallying the community members who had gathered at their house. He reminded them of their purpose and the strength they held as a unified people. They would not be defeated by bureaucracy any more than they had been defeated by cavalry. As Apache families throughout the reservation received word of the impending crisis, Mara felt a surge of the old fighting spirit that had sustained them through the wars. She was no longer fighting cavalry and settlers, but she was still fighting for Apache survival and freedom. The next day brought confirmation of their worst fears. Agent Crawford announced new policies designed to eliminate savage customs and accelerate the assimilation process. Traditional Apache clothing was banned. Speaking Apache languages would result in punishment. All children over 6 would be sent to boarding schools. As the sun rose high over San Carlos, Apache families faced impossible choices. They could resist openly and face imprisonment or military intervention, or they could find subtler ways to preserve their culture while appearing to comply with destructive regulations. Mara took her place beside Nailnish as they prepared to defend their people and their way of life through this new phase of struggle. The weapons had changed from rifles and bows to bureaucratic maneuvering and cultural persistence, but the fight for Apache survival continued. In that moment, Mara realized how much she had grown since Nailnish first found her dying in the desert. She was no longer just surviving. She was helping to ensure that Apache culture would survive the systematic attempts to destroy it. As they stood together facing these new challenges, Mara knew that their love had been tested by war, hardship, and cultural destruction, but it had only grown stronger. With Nailnish by her side and their daughter representing the future, she was ready to fight this different but equally important battle. The reservation was harsh and restrictive, but together they would find ways to preserve what mattered most. They would build a future that honored Apache heritage while adapting to the realities of the changing American Southwest. Their story continued, no longer written in gunpowder and blood, but in quiet resistance and enduring love. The sun rose over the San Carlos Reservation, casting warm light on the adobe buildings that housed Apache families adapting to a new and difficult way of life. Mara stood at her small window, watching Ayana play with other Apache children in the dusty space between government-built houses. Her heart was still heavy from the previous night's crisis meeting. Nailnish sat at their rough wooden table, his wound healing but still causing him discomfort. He was speaking with other Apache men about strategies for protecting their children from the boarding school agents who would arrive within days. The conversation was conducted in low tones and careful Apache phrases that government interpreters wouldn't understand. Mara joined the discussion, her unique perspective as someone who had chosen Apache life, giving her insights into how to work within the Anglo system while preserving essential cultural elements. She had learned to read and write English fluently, skills that proved invaluable in protecting Apache interests. As the day progressed, word spread throughout the reservation about Agent Crawford's harsh new policies. Apache families began making desperate plans to hide children, preserve sacred objects, and maintain traditional practices despite increasing surveillance and punishment. Mara worked with other Apache women to organize covert resistance. They developed hand signals and coded language that would allow them to communicate about cultural preservation without alerting the Apache police who reported to government authorities. When evening came, Nailnish gathered the younger Apache men for what appeared to be a casual social meeting, but was actually planning session for cultural survival. They discussed how to teach traditional skills, stories, and values to their children despite official prohibition. The next morning brought the arrival of boarding school officials and additional Indian police to enforce the new regulations. Mara watched from her doorway as government agents moved through the reservation, searching houses and questioning families about their compliance with assimilation policies. When the agents reached their house, Mara answered their questions in perfect English, presenting herself as a model of successful assimilation while carefully concealing the traditional Apache items hidden throughout their home. Her ability to navigate both cultures proved essential to their survival. Nailnish submitted to questioning with the dignity of a former war leader, neither defiant nor submissive, but maintaining the quiet strength that had made him respected among his people. The agents left satisfied that this family posed no threat to their cultural destruction programs. That afternoon, while government officials continued their inspections, Mara and Nailnish walked to a secluded area near the reservation boundary where they could speak freely. The desert landscape reminded them both of their early days together, when love had first bloomed amid the dangers of Apache resistance. Nailnish spoke about the difficult balance they had to maintain, appearing to accept government authority while secretly preserving the Apache way of life for future generations. Mara listened intently, her heart heavy with the weight of responsibility to their community. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of red and gold, they returned to find their neighborhood in turmoil. Several Apache children had been taken to boarding schools, their parents' grief echoing through the settlement like mourning songs. Mara held Ayana close that night, teaching her traditional Apache lullabies in whispered tones while Nailnish kept watch for patrol agents who might detect forbidden cultural activities. Their small house became a secret sanctuary for Apache traditions. The following weeks brought a routine of careful deception and cultural preservation. During daylight hours, they participated in government-mandated activities, agricultural work, English lessons, Christian services. But in the evening darkness, Apache life continued in hidden ways. Mara became a crucial link between the Apache community and the outside world, using her literacy and cultural knowledge to help families deal with bureaucratic requirements while protecting their essential identity. She translated legal documents, helped with correspondence, and served as interpreter during official meetings. One day, while working in the government-mandated garden plots, Mara noticed a familiar figure approaching the reservation. It was a newspaper reporter from Tucson, investigating conditions at San Carlos for a story about Indian policy. She felt both hope and anxiety about this outside attention. Nailnish warned her to be careful about what she revealed to the reporter. Any criticism of reservation conditions could result in severe punishment for Apache families, but publicity might also bring pressure for reform of the worst abuses. When the reporter interviewed her, Mara spoke carefully about reservation life, emphasizing Apache adaptability and resilience while subtly highlighting the human cost of forced assimilation policies. Her words were chosen to protect her people while educating outsiders about their situation. The resulting newspaper article brought some positive attention to Apache conditions, leading to minor improvements in rations and medical care. More importantly, it demonstrated that Apache voices could still be heard despite government attempts to silence them. As autumn approached, marking 2 years since their surrender, Mara reflected on how much their lives had changed while fundamental things remained the same. They were still fighting for Apache survival, but with different weapons and tactics. Their love had deepened through shared struggle and mutual dependence during these difficult years. Nailnish remained her anchor and strength, while she had become his partner in the complex work of cultural preservation and community leadership. One evening, as they watched Ayana play Apache games taught secretly by her grandmother Beshbiegawa, Mara felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Despite all the obstacles, Apache culture was surviving and adapting, carried forward by the love and determination of families like theirs. Nailnish took her hand as they sat together on their small porch, watching the stars emerge over the familiar mountains. He spoke of hope for the future, that their daughter would grow up knowing both Apache traditions and Anglo skills, able to navigate between two worlds successfully. Mara felt deep gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a dying settler's daughter in the desert to an Apache wife and mother fighting for cultural survival, she had found purpose and belonging that transcended the boundaries of birth and race. As the night deepened around them, Mara knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to protect what they held most dear. But with Nailnish beside her, and their community united in quiet resistance, she felt ready for whatever the future might hold. Their story continued to evolve, no longer written in the dramatic conflicts of the Apache Wars, but in the daily acts of love, courage, and cultural preservation that would ensure Apache survival for generations to come. In the end, they had not just survived the collision of two worlds, they had helped create a bridge between them, built on understanding, respect, and enduring love.